Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of TBR. I'm George Binns, and this evening we're going to talk about the coming primary and election for state representative, and with one of the candidates, Todd Rotondo. Welcome, Todd.
George, thanks for having me again tonight. It's nice to see you.
So you want to be state rep? Why?
Why? Listen, I've always ran with the idea of working for people, helping people out, whether it was a PTO president, the civic association. Currently, as a city councilor, my job has always been constituent service. I know a big portion as a state rep is constituent service. It's to make sure that we're advocating for the needs of the people of the 6th district in this case. I want to continue that. I want to still work as hard as former Representative Parisella did. He was always great to work with as a city councilor, and his position as a state rep. We've always had a good working relationship. You may be well aware, I mean, I have 2 inadequate bridges and a lot of traffic, and so I've been fortunate to be part of the state conversation, federal conversation, since the get-go of when it happened in June of 22.
So, yeah, that's your Ward 1.
That is one of my, yes, that is my Ward 1. And uniquely, though, you know, as I've been told, is, you know, what am I, the Ward 1 City Councilor at Large? You know, naturally having a business in the city, I tend to come across from people all over the city. And, you know, if someone comes in and they know that, you know, I may have a better understanding of a situation or they need help in their ward, they may come and ask me. You know, obviously first is to ask their councilor to make sure that they're aware of it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't stop me from at least pursuing and helping them, because that's my personality, is to naturally want to help a person,
yeah.
and rightfully so. But secondly, it's also as a business model, not to, you know, just blow a person off. It doesn't make for a good business model, right? So I mean, I know it's a city council, ward council for me, but the reality is, as a business owner in the downtown for over 26 years, I've had the, you know, uniqueness of having always coffee hours, right?
Yeah.
Or if someone from, you know, for instance, on a Thursday at lunchtime, I get a lot of Ward 6 people that come in. They meet together. They're from the farms and they're from Centerville, and they come. So I get to talk with them and hear what their issues. Same up in Ward 5. So it's a little uniqueness that I have.
So it's not just Ward 1 issues. You're getting involved with the whole city, and so it isn't too much of a stretch to take on a piece of Danvers.
So Wenham.
Wenham.
Yes, correct. You know, look at. Even within the whole city, my jobs before a city council, working on Livingstone Park and building that park with the neighbors and the residents of Ryleside. Mm-hmm. But then I had a person who did the tot lop up on Wentworth, up in Ward 6, who reached out to me and said, "Hey, look, we're building this. What experiences? What do you have?" Well, why would I not want to help them? I've already done it. Yeah. I've already created things that would help them move it quicker and easier, and as well as navigate with them. Because they're in Ward 6, I don't help them. It just didn't make sense to me, you know. And so I'm aware of issues. Up in Dunham Road, I know that the city's looking to try to get state grant funding to create some sort of a roundabout there to make it easier for the neighbors, as well as there to go, for the North Shore Music there to come and go easier. So I'm aware of other situations within the city. Although I know that my representation is Ward 1, right? Apple Village, Ryleside.
Yeah, nominally Ward 1, yeah.
Right. So that's the uniqueness. I'm working my way on that, right? So my idea right now, as I've always done as a councilor, is to always, make sure that I get to know, or at least introduce myself to people there. I do know and have some friends that live in Wenham. And obviously, I want to hear what their issues are.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm working on right now as a candidate.
Yeah. So what are their issues? Any different from ours?
No, surprisingly, traffic is one of their big issues, the 3A project. Beverly, we don't necessarily have the 3A issue. We've pretty much come in complete. I'm sorry. The 3A issue is the MBTA compliance for creating by right housing. We were already almost there in compliance. There was some tweaking that the planning department had to do that had minimal effect. And fortunately, the planning department was able to create that, as well as their ADU that they've been able to, create. There's still some work to be done. That there's like almost 3 parts with that. They have still the design standards they have to create. But I did sit with some residents in Wenham recently. And that was one of the things I asked. I said, what is this, concerns in your area? So remember, Wenham for us, district-wide, is split in half. It's almost as 1A is the line east of 1A, right? And so part of that position is the Gordon College, which, if you may be well aware or not aware, is that Gordon College has been looking to sell some of its property to development, 300 plus units, which will help with their tax base, but they're having issues with getting the water into it. So those are things that we, as a state rep, need to be aware. Work with the city. How can there be a compromise if there's one to be had?
Yeah.
So that's a big portion of the district there. Again, as I said, traffic is an issue. The 3A project is an issue. I did get some.
Well, how do they get involved in 3A? They don't have a train station, do they?
So the 3A, actually, it's not just people who are directly abut the train station, but it also goes outwards to a point, and the percentage changes accordingly. So Danvers as well has to come into conformity of that as well, even though they may have a bus, or in this case, Hamilton has the train station, so it's close enough that they have to.
Because the overlap from Hamilton gets them.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's why the communities have to have certain compliances at a certain percentage point. So that's Wenham's sort of. The other thing I was just brought to my attention is they're looking to do some new schools, right? And they're a regional district.
Yeah.
And so it's to hear them, what they're looking for, and try to hear the people of what the residents want and what they're looking to do. Where it is a regional district, it's a little different. Their assessments come differently. It's like we get our bill from the Essex North Shore Tech, whereas the Beverly school system, we get the budget, we approve it. We share it with, essence, like 20 plus districts because of the agricultural part of the school.
Yeah.
And I sit on that as the school council. I sit on the Essex Tech because my son's a student there.
Oh, yeah. That's one of the issues that I think the city is going to have a problem with. And again, it's a state issue because Essex Tech is a state facility. And when they built the high school that we're in right now, they didn't build the patent trade school. They shut it down. And the deal was, because we don't have a trade school, then we get access to Essex Tech. Well, sort of the idea was that, Essex Tech is going to take all of our students who want that kind of an education, and they can't. So the question, I guess, in my mind is, how do we get some sort of authority back here in Beverly so that we can have more of a trade school or that trade technology kind of education and not mess up the deal with Essex Tech so we can still send kids there?
So when they changed how the high school was being built, right?
Yeah.
And that was, what you said, right? The patent school became shut down. We, as a community, decided that we were going to concentrate on this regional technical agricultural school, right? And so there's a application process and there's a waiting list, unfortunately, and it's a well sought after. We know as a society that our tradesmen are no longer going into the trades like they used to. My generation was always told it's technology, it's computers. You need to go to college. You need to go to college.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, what happened was less people were going into becoming electricians and things of that nature, or a plumber. But now we're realizing that we need them because the generation before me is now retiring, and we need to fill those gaps.
Yeah.
We are the second or third largest sending of students to the tech. Now it comes with the cost, right? And so we get the bill as a council.
Oh, yeah.
But the other thing that the superintendent has done, so there's an after dark program where students come here in the morning and to allow them to get technical training on a certain amount. And that was with the mayor as well. So they worked on that.
Yeah.
And there's 5 shops, I believe, they're working on. Well, the other thing, because there's still a limited amount and we still have a lot of students seeking these trades, the superintendent was able to work with the superintendent of schools in Salem to identify other shops where we sort of mimic the same programming with the After Dark program. We do it with the Salem program, and it's slightly less because the formula is different that.
Yeah.
So that's sort of how they're working
Yeah.
it, that we're missing the patent school. And I don't know if we'll ever be able to get that back to the city right now, at least in the near future, because that would require to build more building onto the school district to allow for this, repopulation of trades.
Yeah, so it's a big project to do, but at the same time, you look at the number of kids that are stuck on that waiting list, and there's a need, there's an interest, and I think what you're rightly projecting is that the trades didn't all disappear. They got a lot more technical than they used to be, and it's not something that you can walk into the shop and hang around for a couple of years, and next thing you know, you apply for your license. It requires more than that. So there's a definite need that it's something that needs to be worked on. And at least that doesn't get us into the free-for-all with the various federal agencies like we're into right now with the bridge and getting on the highway.
The infrastructure.
Infrastructure. There's the issue over Folly Hill.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get access to and from the place? It's not too bad getting into it from 128 if you're heading towards Gloucester. But if you're leaving that, does everybody want to go to Gloucester from there? Not necessarily. So that's another one of these issues that I think we need state help to get access in and out of Folly Hill to make that a viable community. And at the same time, it's been 10 years or more that we've been struggling trying to do something to make access to Dunham Road much more commercially viable. It's really not a good idea to just keep running all these cars through the residential section. But at the same time, yeah, it affects the tax base when Cummings decides to put another building up and expand, and there's a lot of valuable opportunity there.
So interestingly, Folly Hill is my ward.
Yeah.
Right? So that's part of Ward 1, and I have been involved with the conversation from the get-go. And this is well before I became in office that we know the city tried to change zoning. It went through courts. It came back to us. What's the better solution? Not the best. Best solution is not to create, because we're afraid of the infrastructure, what it is, because there's only one way in, one way out.
Yeah.
So, we know that MEPA is involved, the Massachusetts Environment Protection Agencies there. They do two reasons. One is to do with environmental, but as well as traffic impact, right? Because it affects our environment. More cars, more smog, what have you.
Yeah.
We know that the two intersections that are really going to be highly affected is going to be the 1A interchange as well as the 62 interchange, whether you're coming or going, right?
Yeah.
We also know right now there's currently over 550 units there between the Folly Hill apartments, the Cherry Hill condos, and then the Apple Village.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that, as a city council, that it was when I first was elected, was the whole Cape Ann Transportation Authority shuttle, right? It wasn't meant to be rapid, but one thing I recognized up there was a lack of availability. They would come one day a week on a Saturday early in the morning. They'd make their loop. The residents specifically up at Apple Village, who we know not everyone was able to afford a car, or they were older and didn't feel comfortable driving a car, they didn't get up early in the morning to grab this shuttle because they had no desire to get up, because they were they're geographically landlocked, right?
Yeah.
And so with the mayor's help and the planning department, we were able to do a survey amongst all the housing authority units and then actually change the route to get there. And I was only advocating for 2 additional days during the week to bring it, further into the Apple Village neighborhood, but as well as Folly Hill would be able to get it in Cherry Hill condos if need be. And we were able to get it every single day, and they changed the route, and what they did is they added Market Basket to it, which gave people who would have more affordable grocery spots to go to,
Yeah.
and it goes to main spots within the shuttle. It's not the quickest shuttle, but it did help to cut down on some of the traffic.
Yeah.
I know that this developer being part of this conversation, and we've had many meetings with the residents at the restaurant, with the mayor, with their attorneys that have discussed about the concerns of the residents. So when we filed our statements to MEPA, everyone, a lot of people were discussing the interchange and other things and impact. me as the council for that area, my concern was the internal traffic. We don't have jurisdiction as a city on those. Those are all private roads. But it doesn't negate the concerns that the neighbors at Apple Village, specifically in Cherry Hill condos, were having because of the fork in the road and the interchange and where the actual Folly apartments are being proposed, these new development. What the most recent planning department, a planning board meeting that came out of it was, the other thing that, to back up for a second, my apologies, is I have been actively for the last 5 years advocating for some sort of a grocery store. We were hoping to get something ran out of the Apple Village complex. Beverly Bootstraps was willing to work with us. It just never materialized because of management with Apple Village. When we sat with the developer and the attorneys, I continued advocating, and I put it in my statement to MEPA, is we really need a convenience store or a store of some sort, which would also lessen the trips out of the campuses. But there was a meeting years ago, before I was even elected, when the planning department was doing their master plan and they were going to neighborhoods. And there was a father with his 2 children sitting in this room that we were all doing our planning board outreach. And he said, you know, I don't drive. And I want to simply be able to get a loaf of bread and a gallon of milk when there's a snowstorm. I take that, what we have, the convenience stores that I could walk to or drive to get to simply in a matter of minutes. They don't have that there. They are landlocked. They are a food desert. And so we're fortunate that Beverly Bootstraps and other agencies make their way up there. They do the farmers' mobile market up there. But at the last planning board meeting, Councilor Samasco, who's representing them, stated that they now, because of the advocacy, are committed to providing, I think it was about 1,000 square feet of commercial space for up to 3 years for someone to come in and open up a store. Now, does it happen? I don't know. But it's a step forward. They're listening to the residents. They're listening to the, you know, what the mayor and I have been advocating up there. They've also talked about possibly giving some additional funding to the city to help with the shuttle, because they recognize too that to cut down transportation will help alleviate the traffic. We do right now have the Skipper service, which is fantastic because that's a rideshare service that's affordable. And by chance, that section of Beverly actually gets served by it. It doesn't serve the whole city like it does in Salem, but it does get them to certain appointments at the Endicott MGH building. And if by chance they want to go to Market Basket, they can get off and have to cross the street, and then they go back over there to catch their rideshare. But it also cuts their trip down. So those are little things that they've been able to manage to do. The interchange, interestingly enough, a couple of years ago, the mayor asked for free cash of $750,000 in order to push it a little bit easier with the design stamp of that overpass up over by the Dunham Road to help alleviate that. I know Councilor Feldman's been very, very hard on advocating for that to alleviate some of the traffic concerns of her neighbors up there. You know, with the North Shore Music there, you got Iron Tree up there, Mistranzi, all that, right? So she's been great and crucial on advocating for that, as well as the roundabout, which they're working with the Mass State grants and stuff like that. So I hear you on that, and that would help to alleviate. But those 2 interchanges would still be affected by the Folly Hill traffic. And we're hoping with the state agency, that they identify what standards need to be implemented. And we'll eventually see that, and that will be included with the traffic study and what have you.
Yeah. So, I mean, that gets to be part of the issue of growing from being a local councilor to being a state rep, where you have to deal with the other side of this game. How do you get the state agencies to pay attention to our needs? The classic example is just showed up in the paper just the other day that the meeting on the bridges has been postponed again. So there's a fundamental problem, I think, of trying to get the attention of the state agencies to listen to our problems and do something about them instead of just pushing them off. So I see this as one of the challenges you're asking for, is how do you get into that game and how do you make that happen?
So it's almost natural right now. I've been involved in these conversations as a city councilor, right? My voice is not as loud. But I have been fortunate to be included in this conversation because of my constituent service. For when calls come in, and if the mayor's office isn't readily quickly available to get that answer, I get those phone calls and I answer them.
Yeah.
My biggest thing that I've always had the ability to do is communicate. Communicate, facilitate, advocate, all of those things. And whether it was something, if I wasn't sure of, I would call Representative Parisella, Senator Lovely, or the mayor. The day that the bridge was being shut down, I had already been notified as a council because I knew, and the mayor knew, I was going to get these phone calls.
Yeah.
As a state rep, that gives me a larger voice, but it also, I'm boots on the ground.
Yeah.
I am in that ward right now. So for me to advocate, simple. Now, to tell you is right now is the state agencies have been fantastic to help push it along. It's the federal agencies that we need to push and advocate with, which we've been doing. So, former state representative Parisella were on the call, and Senator Lovely and Congressman Moulton's office, and Senators, Warren and Markey, they're all on the call with the mayor's office and our engineer team and this MassDOT. We're all on these Zoom calls, or we're in council chambers talking about all these things. And how do we move it and expedite it? There was one meeting with Lieutenant Governor Driscoll, who's over at the next city, who's well aware of what's there, so right now it's, I know, and I've seen many posts, and even from you, the Bailey Bridge being built, which is sort of what that temporary bridge is going to be done. Part of the issue is the Army Corps of Engineer. It's the EPA, the federal EPA.
Yeah.
It's the Coast Guard, because it's still navigational waters.
Yeah.
So the marine is there. And so the state agency had a unique situation they've never been faced with before, is how do we legally take taxpayers' dollars and physically trailer these boats, these 30-something boats, from the Bass Haven Yacht Club yard to their moorings? Because they're not moving on a daily basis. We know those bridges, that bridge opens on average twice a year, and they stack the boats to come out of the yard area, go to their moorings, and they come back in the fall. So the state agency had to identify which part of the division should be responsible and can it legally be done. And we all know that nothing moves quickly, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Once they did that, and hearing the residents, and I know I still get phone calls that people say, I can't believe they're going to be wasting money on this temporary bridge. To me, my fear is it's going to be that much longer if we didn't have a permit. And I understand the economic, I truly do understand and hear that piece. But I also live it on a daily basis. Like, I've changed my whole routine to get to my restaurant that is less than a mile, that now sometimes takes me upward of 20 minutes because it's now pushed all the traffic onto Elliott Street.
Yeah.
And we know that the Kernwood Bridge was first programmed to get done. But unfortunately, the function of the Hall Whitaker had to be done quicker and closed down. So now we have in essence, 3 bridge projects. I've been involved with that since day one.
Yeah.
I've only been, and I've said this, I'm only a councilor, but this is what makes sense to me. As a state representative, I'm going to still be able to have those experiences as well as those relationships. Those don't go away because I become a state rep. It allows me to have a bigger voice, to make sure that people's voices are being heard. I'm still going to answer my calls as a state representative. I'm still going to be on top of those things. It's by chance that a lot of things seem to be happening in Ward 1 right now.
Yeah.
The Folly Hill project, the interchanges that will be affected by that, the one-way, one-out, as well as the 3 bridge projects, the Elliott Street traffic, the traffic lights that the state gave us to, in essence, to make them more functionable than what they were prior. They have the whole sensor lights above it so that they try to time it better.
Yeah, they got a camera to.
The camera image, yes.
And they feed it into a computer, and it figures out how many people are waiting in line, and do we turn it green or do we keep it red? Yeah.
So like I said, you get federal and state agencies we're working on. In essence, it's like 5 agencies. And it seems as from my observation with conversations, a lot of it seems as if it's the federal part of it, which the state and the local have been advocating hard to push it harder. I know MassDOT wants to make sure that they've crossed their T's, dot their I's, so when it gets submitted to the Coast Guard, they don't reject it backwards and say, okay, come back with a different plan, because it's still deemed navigational waters, which means is, maritime law. So so that's where that whole infrastructure piece is.
I think people are starting to recognize that there's a lot more involved in these projects than simply taking out the bridge and putting in a new one. And that gets into the challenge of, I think, being a state rep is to, can you deal with the agencies that are outside the city? It's one thing to get a call from a constituent and say, oh, there's a tree on my property that's really on the sidewalk and it needs to come down, and go get the tree service to either trim it or take it down. That's relatively easily, although I've noticed some challenges in my neighborhood with that, but it's another story. That now you're dealing, like you say, with the federal government, the Coast Guard, and I think there's an issue over the eelgrass at the
Well, that's the EPA.
EPA, and there's a lot of these different agencies that get their finger in the pie, and how do you get them to function? So I wish you luck.
Thank you. And I'm already doing that right now, right, from a council standpoint, but I hear what you're saying as a state rep. You know, it will still be the same issues. Now I'll just have that larger voice.
So we've had about a half hour of fun.
Wow.
It goes quick.
It does go quick when you and I seem to talk.
When you get into
another
the
hour
issues,
and a half.
Yeah. So would you like to say something to the audience? Come vote for me.
Absolutely. Look, I'm a city councilor running for state representative. I hope, first of all, that it being a special election coming this springtime, it's not that anyone's going to know. Any of us candidates need to make sure that people know that to get out and vote. I'm asking for your vote. I think through my experience as a city councilor for those last 5 years, dealing with the issues that are really our state-level issues will be a natural help. So I am asking for your vote, your support. Know that my phone will always be available to you, and thank you.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. And obviously, as we get closer to the election, there'll be more to talk about.
Absolutely.
And it's going to be a fun season. It's going to be an interesting spring.
It will be.
Thanks again, and good luck.
Thank you.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us this evening. And if you have any comments, my email is before and after the credits. And if you have a longer statement that you want to make, there's always room for you here at the table. And talk to you next time.